Hello. Welcome back to Business Management Paper 1. And today we're going to be focusing mostly on our 8 to 10 marks and our final 20 mark question exam styles. Okay? So your key aim within these kind of questions is to demonstrate, synthesize, synthesis and evaluation. Demonstrate, synthesis, and evaluation. Okay, so the key thing in writing your answers and structuring it is to rearrange different ideas and make judgments based on evidence. Judgments and evidence is key. Last week and the week before, we put a lot of focus on evidence. So today, I won't be emphasizing too much on evidence and application, but that doesn't mean it's less relevant and less useful for these kind of questions. I'm just assuming that last week was enough of an emphasis for you to understand that application from the case study and using that as evidence for whatever argument you're making is clear inside your minds. So like we always did, we're gonna go through command terms and marks, but we're gonna do it differently because AO3 command terms are command terms that cost you 8 to 10 marks. You want to know exactly what each of them are asking you to do. So we'll go through each of them in detail. And in total we have 7. I'm lying. 9. Compare and contrast, discuss, evaluate, examine, justify, recommend, and to what extent. All of these ask you to do different things, require you to write different types of answers. And we're going to go through them, but it's important that when they ask you examine question, you examine instead of recommending. Okay? If they're asking you to examine it, they're like asking you to analyze a situation and understand it in depth with the background, underlying knowledge and assumptions being explained throughout your answer. But if you do a recommendation, you're suggesting them a solution, which is not what they're asking. It's going to cost you a whole load of mark, not too much if you show enough knowledge and evidence that you've understood the case study. It's going to get you some marks, but it's too much of a risk to take to not know these command words. So these are some command words that don't require an argument. Okay? An argument is usually what students think 10-mark essays should look like. But there are 10 to 8-mark questions that don't require you to state something and try to prove it. They already give you the statement actually. So first are compare and contrast questions. If it says compare, you're only listing similarities. Don't waste time or points writing contrasting points, because they're not going to give you your marks. If it says compare and contrast, it's similarities and differences, so make sure you have a balance of both. And if it just says contrast, focus on differences. So if it's a 10-mark question, and usually in a 10-mark question, you're expected to write 4 points with explanations and case study analysis. So if we say compare, you want to write 4 similarities. If it says compare and contrast, 2 similarities and 2 differences. If it says contrast, 4 differences. Okay. So if it says compare the leadership styles of Pega and Tapio, they are both in a higher position of the hierarchy and thus delegate roles, delegate leadership. Compare and contrast, Tapio is a laissez-faire, Pekka is an autocratic. And then if it says compare, contrast, just skip the sentence. And then we have justify questions. These questions give you a statement in the beginning, as in the statement you will need to justify is already mentioned in the question. So you don't have to think of an argument, make up a position you want to stand for yourself. They've already given that to you. And you have to write your answers with valid reasons or evidence. These evidence come from the textbook and the case study. Okay, and you require a conclusion. A conclusion as in not just a summary of everything you've written, as in the final reason to why it's okay or why it's not okay. Final justification. So an example question may look like, justify reasons why PST has decided to diversify. Okay. And diversification, as we know, the Antoff matrix, would mean market development and product development. So it's developing a new market and product. Justify reasons to why they would have done this. Okay, like I said, the evidence requires some from the textbook and some from the case study. So what are some benefits of diversification? You're gonna find that in your textbook, and it could be like, you could develop a new market and potentially sell more products, as well as targeting your existing market. You could also develop a new product in which other companies or other businesses are not marketing towards. Okay. So these would come from the textbook, and then why that is so useful for PST would come from your case study. So first, the fishing industry is already a well-developed market, probably in its mature stage, okay, within the economy. Thus, continuing on within the same market and product will not give them any more room for growth. Hence, it might be a better option to move to a different product or a different market. Also, other competitors are increasing. That means our existing customers have more choice. Okay? If they have more choice, it's less likely, or it reduces the number of customers that choose our company. Thus, maybe we need a new market to develop who are more needy, okay? Who would have less options, things like that. So evidence, always remember, require both everything, content of your case study and content of your textbook. And then after you give all these reasons, you're going to give a conclusion. Therefore, PST would have decided to diversify because of what and what reasons. So the three main questions you want to think of in justify questions would be, justify questions like this would be, why was it a good decision to diversify? Why did they have to diversify? And why was it better than other options they had? The last one is where it makes you focus on the case study. Now we'll look at single argumented questions. So a type of command terms that asks you to stand on one side and argue for that side only. You don't have to give a balanced argument. If you think it's good, you just have to give points about why it's good, not why it's good and bad. Okay? So recommend, as I said earlier, it's when you suggest a solution, present a course of action that might be a problem, a solution for a problem. Okay? That might solve an issue that the question is presenting. So, an example question may look like, recommend a suitable growth strategy for PST. Okay. So growth strategies, we know that from our textbooks. Like I said, if we look at the Antoff matrix, those are some. Market penetration, market development, product development, and diversification. And of them, it says recommend, so you're only going to choose one and argue for that one only. Why that happened. So once you choose your stance, what you're going to do is think of what kind of steps are required for this, because you're recommending a suitable growth strategy. You're not just saying go for market development. You're going to be like, why not develop a market of grocery shoppers, or maybe overseas retail shops. Currently, PST is focusing a lot on local customers like hotels, supermarkets, people like that. So maybe you could say, if you're gonna say, I'm gonna go for market development, be specific about which market you're gonna develop, because that's what a recommendation is. Just simply saying this strategy is best isn't enough. You have to present a course of action. So, some steps required for that, as in be more precise, give more detail, and think about why. Support and evidence and reason specific to the case study is required. So why is that a suitable growth strategy? Okay. So when you recommend, your basic structure is going to look like, I recommend this because currently PST is at a this and this and this kind of state. And because they are, it makes more sense to go for product development, market development, whatever, and specifically target whatever market, whatever product, because less risk or more needs, more wants. That's the 5 steps. And these are 4 bullet points you would have to think about when you're structuring that answer. Still a general structure like I just quickly mentioned, but applicable for all single argument questions, would be giving 5 pointer statements with evidence from each case study to support your statement. And why would these points be more effective for PST? And then some words, sentence starters you could use to help out if structuring is a little hard for you. This is evident through to provide an evidence. We can see this when to provide evidence. This is seen in, and then you just mention a line number to give evidence. And why would these be effective can be written as the case that as PST is this and this kind of business, or because PST is currently, and so on. So you have a statement sentence, evidence sentence, let's call it application sentence. And then after all of this, you're going to give yourself a general conclusion towards why your argument, why your recommendation, why your perspective and view is the more positive one, the more likable one. Okay. This is what you're probably used to and what your teachers would have focused on most. These are balanced argument questions. This means pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages. And these type of questions usually are the hardest to answer because it requires your knowledge about all the characteristics, advantages and disadvantages about certain theories, contents of the business, as well as knowing the advantages and disadvantages, characteristics of PST itself. So our first word is examine. What it's asking you to do is uncover some assumptions and find interrelationships within the issue. By interrelationships, I mean how are different parts of the business functions or people or stakeholders within the PST related to each other? How do their wants and needs clash or tie in with each other? And uncover assumptions, that means there are some things in the case study that are not really explicitly mentioned, but we have to know. So competitors, obviously, they want more sales and win over PST. That's not going to be said in the case study. You have to know that. It's those kind of simple things that required in your answers for examine questions. So an example question may look like, examine the importance of corporate and social responsibility for PST. One key word we find is corporate social responsibility and examine. So that means why is important. It doesn't mean why is corporate social responsibility important for PST. Okay. It means more of, is corporate social responsibility actually important for PST? Let's have a look at the case study, is what the question's asking. Okay. So, first thing you would look to is why it is important, advantages, like arguments for, and then it'll be like, because the benefits of being corporately socially responsible is this and this and this and that. And then you would be like, Why would it be not important or not as important for PST to be corporately, socially responsible? And here is where you include your disadvantages. Some of the disadvantages of being a corporate social, carrying out corporate social responsibility may be that it costs more, or it requires more time in production, because I don't know if you want to take out the bad gas that's being produced, there's going to be an extra step for that, which is going to slower the production, reducing the efficiency rate. And there could be many other, these are in your textbook, but of them only a few are relevant to PST. So make sure you bear that in mind and only use the ones that's relevant. Okay. So one bad side would be all the competitors are overfishing, and staying responsible is really not going to help with PSA's income. On the other hand, the government really supports the ethical and responsible businesses. Society knows they're gonna buy from they're not gonna buy from unethical businesses. Those kind of things. And then it needs a conclusion. So, why and when would being corporately and socially responsible be beneficial and non-beneficial for PST? And then come up with, your conclusion is not going to give a statement as in it is important or it's not important. It's going to be more like, it's important because of this to that extent, but it's not important, or it really disadvantages PST this far because of these and these factors. So you're trying to weigh it. It's more like, this is a disadvantage, but it's so much heavier in PST. This is definitely an advantage, but it doesn't seem like it's very useful for PST. You're going to weigh all the disadvantages and advantages, linking it to the case study, and that's what examine is asking. To what extent, if you've done TOK or any other IB business, or any other IB topics, subjects, it's going to be very familiar. So you want to consider the merits of an argument. How far? How good, how bad is it? And then you need a clear opinion and solution. So if it says what extent, you're going to state to what extent you think it's good. Out of 0 to 10, I think about 7. Be clear about how far you agree with the statement in the question. So the question may be things like, to what extent has outsourcing and the HR and finance been successful for PST? And you'll be, it's successful to somewhat extent. What are some successes? Give me examples of those kind of success you're talking about. Non-success, well, what weren't so successful? And then which side outweighs? It's similar to examine. Instead, you're going to give a clear conclusion and your opinion. Examine is just analyzing it, examining it, showing your knowledge of the business and the content, whereas to what extent requires you to give your opinion-based conclusion. So for these kind of questions, here's a general structure. You want 2 to 3 positive points, 2 to 3 negative points. If you're arguing for it, if you want to conclude that it's a little more negative than positive, maybe 3 negative points and 2 positive points. If you're going to conclude that the positive side outweighs the negative by a little, maybe add 3 positive points and 2 negative points. Work around with that, but a minimum of 2 points each. Each of them require evidence to support whatever you said. That's from the textbook. And then why is that more important or less important for the case of PST? And that requires your case study knowledge. And then for these kind of questions, you require a conclusion that weighs 2 sides. It's important that you don't just state a simple 2-sentence answer being like, therefore it's good for PST to continue on outsourcing. Therefore it's bad for PST to continue on outsourcing. We're not asking you to give A or B answer. You're gonna give within the spectrum between A and B, where are you, is what these kind of questions ask. So that's what I mean by your opinion. How far is it slanting towards B? How far is it slanting towards A? Weighing it is a key part of this whole essay answer. Okay, so these are some. If a hypothetical and abstract structure doesn't quite work with you, here are sentence starters like I did before. It was successful because, whatever. Let's think of a question. How about low labor turnover? No. Corporate social responsibility. It's successful because it allows the PST to gain governmental support. This is evident through the fact that government supports ethically run businesses, fishing businesses, and this means that the customers are more likely to prefer PST over other businesses. So it was successful because that's your statement, and this is evident through one of the texts in your case study. Content in your textbook. What are some successful points or positive points of corporate social responsibility? And then this means that for PST, apply to case study. However, it was unsuccessful in, or however the disadvantages are, whatever, this is evident through something, and this means that PST, therefore, one side, the benefits of this side is outweighing the limitations of one side. Wait. Although this and this, they seem to have more negative points, this positive advantages, benefits are extremely important within the PST, which outweighs all these negative points. The fact that they would have more negative points doesn't mean it's weighing towards the negative. The weight and value of each different points you have, that's positive and negative, will be different. So we have 2 positive points here and 4 negative points here, but these 4 doesn't really impact the PST as much as these 2, then this is going to be what you're concluding towards. Okay. And then there are ones that ask for balanced suggestions. Suggestions being not arguments. You have a list of options. You have option A, B, C, D. It's not a yes, no, correct, wrong, positive, negative, advantage, disadvantage. That's not what it is. Balanced suggestions is you have an option of A, B, C, D, E, and I think A is this, B is a little weak, C maybe it would be better in different circumstances, D seems perfect. That kind of answer writing would be balanced suggestion command terms. So it requires a balanced review. Review means everyone knows what a review is. You've written an article review, if you've written a movie review, it's more like an overview of the text, the case, and it requires it to be balanced on your view about incorporating or associating one option within the business. Include a range of arguments, factors, and hypotheses with clear opinion and conclusion. So it's a similar question to what we had before, discuss methods of growth. If it asked you for the importance of diversification, you're going to argue that it's important to what extent. Or if it's a justify diversification as a growth method, and you're going to choose a stance and be like, it's important because, and just give the important reasons. If it says discuss the growth method, discuss methods of growth, you're going to list out the methods of growth, and we have 4. Give advantages and disadvantages of each of them. Okay. It doesn't mean you have to use the exact amount of space within your page for each of them. If you have one preference, you could write more about that, but overall, it has to be approximately a decent amount of writing for each option. So, advantages and disadvantages of market penetration, advantages and disadvantages of market penetration, advantages and disadvantages of market development, advantages and disadvantages of product development, and so on for diversification. That's what you're going to be including in a discuss question. And which of them seems most suitable? having compared the advantages and disadvantages of market penetration, disadvantages outweigh, thus market penetration doesn't seem to be a good option. Having weighed the advantages and disadvantages of market development, it seems fairly okay. Product development, because their equipment are so tailored for fishing, developing a different product may be a little difficult. Things like that. So we'll take production out of the list. It's either diversification or market development that seems best for PST could be your type of answer and conclusion. This wasn't a model answer. If you have better evidence, any type of answer could be right as long as it's supported by evidence in the case study and the contents of your textbook. Evaluate is a similar type of question. You weigh the strengths and limitations. It's a little different. So I'm not talking about the advantages and disadvantages. It's strengths and limitations. So limitations means there's a limit. I can't go across this line. And what are some lines I can't cross as PST? Strengths. What are we good at? That kind of things. And a clear conclusion. So evaluate PST's increase in cash inflow through the bank overdraft. Okay, PST's cash inflow increased through bank overdraft and evaluated. So what's the strengths of it? What's the good parts about the increase in cash inflow through overdraft? Well, it means I could pay off liabilities, or I could be at a more stable state because I have more cash with me. What are some limitations? I have to eventually pay them back. And plus interests, this might affect PST's financial stance very negatively. So how does one side outweigh the other in this specific case with a conclusion? That should have had a balanced in front. Anyway, so you're going to give 3 statements. So one statement, advantage, disadvantage. Which of these are more important or crucial to the case study? And then your second statement, advantage, disadvantage. Are they important to the case study? And then the third one, and so on. 3 usually, if you can do more, but then no less than 3. And conclusion, weighing, it says 2 sides, all sides. Or if you've already shortlisted some of them, weigh the final 2 or 3, and then your opinion on each of them. Okay, so far it was a very abstract answering method, and this is going to show you an actual answer to a practice question. It's not going to be a full answer, it's just going to be some planning to an answer. Oh yeah, it's like section B, we're focusing on section B now. These kind of exam questions, these kind of command terms will not show up in section A. It's only gonna be in section B. So, and section B always comes with an extension of the case study. A lot of the times with financial or numerical information as well. So this is one example of a section B type of answer. Knowing all the case study already, this should add on important information for you to answer the questions in this section. So I'll read this with you and we'll have a look at their cash flow. So below is the cash flow forecast for the months 2020 November to 2021 January. PST has borrowed more capital from the bank than before due to technology updates on the trawlers and a replacement of one of them. This has improved PST's cash flow for the time being. However, will not be a sustainable option in the long run. PST is in the process of training because they will soon have to recruit new female members, as well as which would lead to further investments in gender facilities. Okay, so So financially, they've brought in some overdraft from the bank, which has improved their cash flow. It's stopped them from being financially in a dangerous situation. But it's not going to be sustainable. They can't just keep pulling out overdraft. They have more places to spend money, and they need a source of finance, don't they? So that's their financial situations, and this is reflected numerically through the table. Okay, so we can see that the local customers have decreased, and technology updates. They've spent a lot, like they said. More has been spent on training, just as they said. And then they've purchased a new trawler there. So we can overall see the expenditure has increased. If expenditure increased, inflow has to increase as well. Inflow has increased, yay, but then that's due to an increase in bank overdraft. So, having had a look at this case study, let's look at a question. Using the additional information, discuss. If you can remember, discuss was a command word and it required you to give balanced views. Discuss methods PST can use to further improve cash flow. So what are some methods for them to improve cash flow? And then tell me the disadvantages and advantages of each option. And in the conclusion, tell me what kind of option suits PST best in your opinion. So these are some methods to increase cash flow generally. You reduce cash outflow, increase cash inflow, alternative sources of finance other than the bank, other measures such as just operating functions. Okay. And these are some general methods to increase the cash flow. That's going to be in your textbook. We've got lengthening crediting terms, alternate suppliers, buying our trawlers from a cheaper business, lower our expenses. We can use less electricity, use less workers, increase cash flow, that means tighter credit control. Or cash payments, make customers pay by cash so that money comes in directly without creditor days. Change in pricing policy, they can charge fishes at a higher price. Hopefully it will sell, hoping that the sales won't decrease from it. Broaden product portfolio, market planning, plan it in a specific way to sell better. And then alternative sources of finance would be overdraft. That's what PST did. Got some from the back. Debt factoring, we know this. If I have debt from this business and this business has debt from me, we get a third business to control this and be canceling out the debts. Yeah, so if I owe A $20 and B owes $20 to me, the C is gonna come in and be like, okay, because you owe her 20 and I owe them 20, you can just owe her 20 straight away. That's what debt factoring is. Leasing, we know that. Sales of fixed assets, government assistance, and then some other measures could be contingency funds, paying bills by installments. Maybe instead of monthly, you could pay it by every 2 weeks. Or develop a wider customer base, which would mean more customers, target a larger range of customers. Of them, we only have a few, only have some that's relevant to PST. And they're in blue. Lowering expenses. We don't want to fire workers, and because staff loyalty, teamwork is so important within PST, we don't want any kind of dismissal or redundancy that may seem unfair happening, so that's out of the list. We're not going to discuss about that. Cash payments. Customers are already paying in cash, and a lot of them paying credit cards without creditor days. If we do have people that's paying less or paying longer, taking longer to pay, it's the supermarkets. So tighter credit control will be better. And all of this are ones that could apply. The ones that's not in blue is either not applicable or definitely not worth considering, because they don't want more overdrafts, do we? Of them, we're gonna choose 3 to 4, just as we said in the discuss questions. No. And here's 3 I thought would be best. So, if it's a discuss answer, we're gonna be like lengthening the credit terms with equipment and trawler supplies to control cash outflow will be a method to improve cash flow, because these and these advantages are there. Large expenditure could be controlled in favor of payments being received from the customers. However, there are these disadvantages. It will be a sensitive matter to the suppliers as well. If I pay them slower, it impacts their cash flow. And because the suppliers are at a better stance, they have more ships and fishers asking for their trawlers. We're not at a place, we're not at a situation to be like, I'm gonna pay slower, because they could be like, okay, then I'm not selling to you anymore. And then our second option could be pay installments, pay bills by installments. This could be beneficial because of these advantages, but it could have these disadvantages. Thus, paying bills by installments could be not too effective, as bills are paid based on the contract that was signed when PST first moved in. Changes within that contract would be very difficult, and if the landlord isn't happy with the new suggestion, they could just say no, simply say no, and that's not going to change much. So if they're going to pay by installments, they would have to suggest a good reason why the contract should change. Tightening crediting terms. Advantage means cash flow can be monitored easily. We know when our money is coming in. We're not waiting a whole month on the supermarket to just send us money at any time they want to. Disadvantages is that there are a lot of competitors within the fishing industry, so if we don't satisfy the supermarket, they might decide not to do any more business with us. It's similar to lengthening crediting terms. Therefore, having discussed about these 3 options, which one of them, let's say paying installments. Paying installments sounds like the best option because it doesn't impact our sales and customers' trust, and it could be something that could be spoken over nicely if the contracts amendments to the contract doesn't highly disadvantage the landlord, because in the end the landlord's getting the money anyway. Yeah, so that could be an answer to my discuss type question. And then now we've got some quantitative analysis to do. So in your case study, at the very last page, you should have had an appendix. And we briefly went through this in the first session, and I asked you to do some analysis yourself as well. So here's a little checklist. I'm going to go through it very quickly, assuming that you've already done it. This was what was presented in the appendix. Okay. And what are some things that are important to notice? What are some calculations we could expect our questions to ask us to do? What are some main points of problems or good points that we see within the PST's financial situation? Okay. One thing, current assets are decreasing. On the other hand, current liabilities are increasing. Okay, liabilities means money I have to pay back. Asset is the money I have. Moreover, our cash reached 0 in 2019 and has stayed 0. Some important things to notice there, and then we have some things to notice. And then decrease in net profit. That was a huge drop. plus low sales and high current liability, these three are the worst three to be together, because that means the company will be in debt very soon. Because sales are decreasing and our liabilities are increasing. So these two lines are going to cross over very quickly. That means I won't be earning enough. Moreover, I'll be in debt. Zero cash means they have limited ability to pay back loan. They can't pay back whatever they've borrowed quick enough if they don't have cash. If they're waiting for their trawlers to sell off so that we have money to pay our liabilities, by that time interest may have added on, or because of factors like that, zero cash is very dangerous. So make sure you've noticed these and taken note of that. And now we're going to do some calculations based on these numbers. So an easy one is current ratio. Current ratio is the ratio between our current assets and liabilities. Okay, it's best if we have more assets than liabilities, and if we have the same, if the number for current assets and current liabilities are the same, it means you're okay, but you should really be earning more or having more assets. If it's dropping below 1, so if we have less current assets than liabilities, that's when we know that the business is in danger. And that's exactly the case for 2020. They had just a little more in 2019, but then their current assets dropped and their current liabilities rose. So they have a current ratio of 0.75. It's in a very difficult financial situation. And these are some calculations. You do that by, you should know this, current assets divided by current liabilities. And just calculating it is not enough. Your questions are not going to ask you for a number. Most of the times it's going to ask you for an explanation. So in that kind of answers, you're going to say, in your current ratio that's below 1 means that the business is in financial crisis or in very dangerous financial situation, because they have more liabilities than the assets, the ability for them to pay off borrowed capital. And then we've got asset test ratio. So it's current assets minus stock, whatever we have minus how much we're selling, over current liabilities. Okay. It's easy to memorize that formula and calculate it, but most of your marks, I say that again, is not from calculating. Formula text, you get that in your study guide, you get that in your, I bet you get it in your exam as well. Yes, you do get it in your exam as well. So calculating, for all of you good at maths, bad news, is not going to get you enough marks. You have to know what these ratios mean. An asset test ratio means the firm has a liquidity problem. So anything less than 1 means the business has liquidity problems. And insufficient fund to pay short-term debt. Insufficient to pay long-term debt is okay. I have quite some time to pay it. If I don't have the ability to pay my short-term debt, I have to do something now, put my business function, selling stuff to a side, to pay this debt I have in front of me. And if this continues to happen, I'm not going to be able to focus on the rest of my business functions. So that's the problems associated with PST and the asset test ratios. And these are some other type of questions that you should familiarize yourself with, because it could be in the question. I mean, could be in your exam. Calculating is fine, but stock turnover means the number of days taken for a load of stock to sell out, or days that take you to need to restock. So if I buy 20 headphones from a business and I take 5 months for 20 headphones to sell off, my stock turnover number of days would be 12 months. Did I say 12? No, 5 months. Debtor days ratios would mean the number of days that takes for the people who've bought my products to pay me. for my customers to pay me. In the case of PST, the supermarket can take up to months to pay them back. So debtor days ratio would be about how long it takes for my customers to pay me what they've bought. Creditor days is how long I take to pay people, suppliers I bought from. Annual depreciation is the decrease in value, fixed assets, money I have within the business throughout the years. So we'll quickly run through steeple analysis. There isn't too much, but just realize that steeple is always external factors. So it's things that businesses have no control over. Okay, and how they influence PST. First, we've got social. If we see in 939, it says many people are switching from eating meat to eating fish. So there seems to be a social trend going on about eating healthily or eating less meat. Okay. That's going to benefit PST because, well, obviously they're selling fish. Some technological changes is that the technology industry is growing rapidly. It's not even growing, it's growing rapidly. And that means more technological advancements could be made for trawlers, for PST fishing operations. And this is seen through the fact that PST uses latest technology. It's probably available for them, the latest technology is probably available for them because technology industry is growing rapidly within Finland. Otherwise, where would they have gotten a hold of this technology if it's not in the country? And in line 105, PST has recently installed the latest satellite technology on its trawlers. Okay, that's one thing we found out, one thing we identified. But a further advantage PST faced or PST experienced from this external factor, technological development, was that electric equipment enables better monitoring of fish. They can monitor fish better. And thereby improve navigation and the chances of good fish catches. So through technological advancements, through the rapid growth of the technology industry, PST was able to better monitor fishes and increase the chances of good fish catches. Then we have ethical values. So what are some ethical values we see within the case study? It's not specifically said, but by the fact that the government is placing fishing quotas, tells us something about their values regarding overfishing, particularly maybe animals or sustainability for future generations. The government has a policy of supporting responsible and ethically managed fishing business, this being businesses that don't overfish, and gender equality is valued, and we can see that through the problem or the debate, the questions, the conversation Tapio and Pekka has about recruiting female crew members. They have received female applicants, and if any of current workers decide to leave, they have to accept female applicants. This is because we can see in the text, the government is requiring businesses to be genderly balanced, and currently PST only has male crew members. So this gender equality is the ethical value the current case study, the country within the case study has, and this is impacting PST because they have to hire female crew members. That means they need more equipment, rooms, facilities to suit the female crew members' needs. At the moment, they only have so for male crew members. They might need different rooms to sleep in, different toilets, showers, etc. And that's how the gender values of the case study would impact PST. Then there are current economic changes happening. So technology businesses have relocated and thus are providing higher and more stable wages. So the overall economical employment rate for one, and the working wage is overall increasing. How would that economical change impact PST? Well, that means more crew members may decide to work in different businesses because they pay better, pay more, or PST might need to improve their pay to attract more skilled workers. Because potential applicants might decide to go to other businesses. And staff loyalty and workforce morale becomes more important to maintain because now they can't attract employees by wages. We have other companies that's providing more wages. Then, making them stay is an important factor, and the reason they stay within the case study says it's staff loyalty. And the government are more likely to invest in a growing industry, aren't they? Fishing industry, as I said before, is in a maturing stage. Technology is growing rapidly, so it's more likely for the government to invest in these technology businesses. This means less support from the government will be received by PST, and that's one of the impacts PST will be experiencing through the economical change, through the growth of technology and the overall increasing employment rate alongside more higher wages being provided by other companies. Now we have legal impacts. So like we already know very well, the government decided to employ fishing quotas. And then extra legislation for equal opportunity for gender. They also have health and safety laws to protect the employee workforce. These are some kind of legal factors that's currently and will in the future impact PST. So, quota means fishing less. If you fish less profit margin, that's how it's being impacted. And then equal opportunity between gender. That's a legal issue because it's bound by law. That means more investments will be required. Health and safety laws means more close monitoring, and also investments in workforce is required to meet these legislations. These are things they have to keep. The PST has to abide by, irrelevant to their wants or ethics or thoughts, because it's what the law says. And lastly, we have environmental issues. So these can usually, a common mistake made by students here is thinking of nature only, about the trees and seas and the air only, and air pollution, water pollution is often something that's only mentioned within this environmental section. But environmental impacts also include things like geographical environment, as in, are there more mountains? That's one, but is this a place where many cars come? Is it a very urban area? Do we have a lot of buildings? That kind of environment is also included in the environmental impacts, externalities, and architectural situations, like I said, the buildings. The roads, are they paved? Are they large? Are there traffic congestions often nearby, creating a lot of sound pollution within the business? Things like that are also included in the environmental part. So first, in line 91, it says, the market price is subject to fluctuations due to factors such as weather. So first, because we are a fishing industry and we are by the coast and it's Finland where there are seasons, weather is unpredictable. It could be windy one day, rainy one day, and it's gonna impact PST. So how does the environment impact PST? It could have different types of climates, hence impacting their schedules for fishing. And that's exactly what it says in line 969. It says scheduling trawlers and crews could be difficult because climate is not predictable and these can't be predicted like years in advance. Also, this is a geographical environment issue. Finland's best fishing waters are far away, so the PST is located far from where it's ideal to be fishing. This means, how is this impacting PST? It's taking longer, their journeys take longer, and it requires more working days and working hours for workers. Those working hours being spent on our time traveling to the best fishing waters as well. Thus, overall reducing productivity in comparison to time spent and efficiency. If it was closer, they could reduce that time and make sure the workers are spending more of their time in fishing rather than traveling to the ideal place of fishing we want to be in. Okay, so this is homework, and next week we're gonna be covering section C. That means your 20-mark answers. Your 20-mark answers, those require a lot of analysis as well as your knowledge on these kind of stuff. Fishbone diagram, Gantt chart, decision tree, force field analysis. One of them are definitely gonna show up. Often it's decision trees, but make sure you know what each of them are. Do an analysis of what answers, what the results of these diagrams and trees mean. Oh yeah, so that's written here. First, how to construct it, and then when do we use it, why do we use it, and what each results mean. Many fishbone diagrams, many know how to construct it, but just don't know why we do it. Why are we doing it? And then what each bone in the diagram actually means. Okay. So make sure, it's important that you know that because you need to show knowledge and understanding of the diagram and trees you've constructed within your 20-mark essay. And I will not go through how to do each of them in the next session because these are things already covered throughout the syllabus, as well as 20 marks questions should be focused on answering and getting your marking criterias on point. And think of the stakeholders, because that's a main part, often commonly missed out section in the section C. Section C, 20-mark questions. And understanding stakeholders is worth a fifth of your total marks, so 4 marks. Okay. So identify the main stakeholders, just look at how they impact PST and what are they doing that impacts the case study, and what do they want, what do they need, and how is PST meeting that wants and needs, or how are they not meeting that wants and needs. Oops. Yeah. So that's it for today, and I'll see you next week with stakeholder analysis, section C structuring, and marking criteria.